Hello, everyone. This is Rose. Today's topic from the Book of Life is the Book of Daniel, Part 2. Daniel, a man of faith and purpose, one who walked in faith and lived in truth. Let's take a look at this short story from the Book of Life. After the demise of King Nebuchadnezzar, his oldest son, Belshazzar, became king of Babylon. Belshazzar desires to have a great feast. He's ready to celebrate his kinghood with a feast. He gives a command to have the golden and silver vessels his father had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem to be brought to him for them to drink their wine during the feast. As Belshazzar and his prince, he had many princes, his wives, and his concubines, as they all drank wine from the golden and silver vessels, they praised their gods. They praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. At the time of the king enjoying wine and praising their gods, he saw a man's hand, and this man's hands, he saw the fingers of this man's hand right over the candlesticks upon the plaster of the walls in the king's palace. As the fingers wrote, the king's countenance changed, and his thoughts troubled him to the point that the joints of his loins were loose and his knees knocked together. Just like his father, the king cried out for the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers to be brought to him. The king tells these wise men of Babylon, "Whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold around his neck, and shall be third ruler in the kingdom." The king wise man could not read the writing, nor make known the interpretation. The king was greatly troubled. His queen, the queen began to reason with the king by telling him to not let his thoughts be troubled, nor let his countenance be changed. She tells him, "There is a man in the kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy God. And in the days of your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, this man light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him." The queen also tells the king, "Your father, Nebuchadnezzar, made this man master of the musicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and of the soothsayers." She tells the king to let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. Daniel was brought in before the king. The king asked Daniel, "Are you of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Jewry? I have heard of you, that you have the spirit of the gods in you, and the light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in you. The king tells Daniel, the wise men, astrologers, has been brought before me, but they could not show the interpretation of the writing. He says, I heard that you can make known unto me the interpretation. If you can, you shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold around your neck, and shall be third ruler in the kingdom. Daniel tells the king, let your gifts be to yourself, and give the reward to another. Yet I will read the writing unto you, the king, and make known to you the interpretation. Also Daniel tells the king, because you, the son of Nebuchadnezzar, know God gave your father a kingdom and majesty and glory and honor, but when his heart was lifted up, his mind hardened in pride. Therefore, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and his glory was taken from him. And now you, his son, has not humbled your heart, but has lifted up yourself against the Lord of God. You have brought the vessels of his house before your lords, your wives, and your concubines to drink wine in them. And you have praised the gods of silver and of gold, of brass, iron, wood, and of stone. You praise gods which see not. You praise gods that hear not, nor know not. Yet the God in whose hand your breath is, you have not glorified. What Daniel was saying, in other words, what Daniel was saying, he is telling the king, the God in heaven is the breath you breathe. Because when he created man, he breathed into man's nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living soul. So understand this, as we are living souls walking among this earth, the breath that we breathe was given to us by God. Yet the king chooses to praise false gods. Daniel let the king know that the hand he saw was sent from the living God, and his writing was written. After Daniel interpreted the writing, letting the king know God has numbered his kingdom to be finished, the king commanded that Daniel be clothed with scarlet, and a gold chain be put around his neck, and he shall be third ruler in the kingdom. That very night, King Belshazzar was killed. After the death of King Belshazzar, Darius the Median took the kingdom. Darius was a young man. I believe he was around 32. As the new king, Darius began to set up order. He set over the whole kingdom 120 princes. He set 3 presidents over the prince, of whom Daniel was the first. Daniel was placed above the prince and the presidents because of an excellent spirit was in him. Daniel was placed above all. The prince and the presidents were not happy that Daniel was chosen to be over them. So they did what haters do. They plotted against him. Daniel was a faithful person who was without fault and error. Therefore, the prince and the presidents used his faithfulness to his God in order to create fault and error in him. The prince and presidents assembled together and went to the king. They tell the king that all the presidents, now mind you, Daniel is the head president. He's first, he's over everyone. So they all went together, all except Daniel was not among them. And they tell the king that all the presidents and other leaders of the kingdom have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whosoever should ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days shall be cast into the den of lions. The king believed their request, and the king honored their request. The king established a decree and signed the writing that it may not be changed. One could see the king was not a wise man. He lacked in wisdom. It was obvious. Not one time did he not question why the head president, Daniel, who he appointed to be over all presidents and all princes, was not present to speak on behalf of the kingdom regarding the statute. He didn't question. He didn't ask. He just took these people at face value that what they said was truth. And they deceived him into signing this decree. After Daniel learned of the decree and it being signed by the king, Daniel wasn't not going to allow it to stop him from praising his God. He continued to kneel upon his knees, Daniel did, to pray and give thanks before his God 3 times a day. But he decided that he would pray in the private of his chambers, but he did it with his window open. Of course, the spies who wanted to catch him doing such a thing, because they plotted against him, the prince and the presidents found Daniel praying. Of course they did. Of course they found him praying because they set it up. They knew he was faithful to his God. They wanted him to go against this decree. They tricked the king into signing through deception and lies. So they catch him praying in the private of his chambers. And they did what haters do, who was plotting against him. They ran to the king to report Daniel is not following the decree. They eagerly, request permission to cast Daniel into the dens of lions. They wanted to do it quick, right away. They didn't want the king to have any second thoughts, not think about it. You signed that decree. You put it into establishment for 30 days. Daniel broke it. Let's do it right away. The king was displeased with himself. I'm sure he was after finding out he was deceived into signing that decree. He was displeased with himself. The king set his heart on how to deliver Daniel. So he didn't give them permission right away. He had to think about it. He had to take a day to think about it because he was trying to figure out how to deliver Daniel. Was there something in the law books? Because he's new to this. So he needed to figure out, was there something in the law books that I can do that would take Daniel away from this type of punishment? The men came back to the king to remind him that no decree or statute which the king established may be changed. So the king had no other options. He commanded that Daniel be cast into the den of lions. But the king has a conversation with Daniel before he is cast. He tells Daniel, your God, whom you serve continually, will deliver you. He wanted to encourage Daniel and let him know, your God. Now he was very optimistic about that when he spoke that to Daniel. After signing that Daniel should be cast into the den of lions, King Darius went to his palace and spent the night fasting. After he gave them permission that they can cast him, because he couldn't find a law that can deliver Daniel out of their hands, he was upset. So he went to the palace to spend the night fasting. No instruments of music was brought before him, and he was unable to sleep. The king arose very early in the morning the next day, and he rushed to the den of lions. And when he reached the den of lions, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel. He cried out in a mournful way. At one point, the day before, when he encouraged David, he was very optimistic in saying, your God, whom you serve continually, will deliver you. But throughout the night, he became fearful and he wasn't sure. So when he went and he cried out in that mournful voice to Daniel, he asked Daniel, he wasn't sure. He wanted to know if Daniel was okay. So the king shouts into the den of lions, O Daniel, servant of the living God. He said, is your God, whom you serve continually, was able to deliver you from the lions? He's shouting. He wants to hear Daniel's voice. He's hopeful, but at the same time, he's fearful because he's not sure if Daniel God delivered him. So oh Daniel, was your God able to deliver you, to save you? He shouts in to Daniel. And Daniel replied. He replied to the king. O king, he shouts out of the den of lions. He said, O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel and have shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me. The king was exceedingly glad for Daniel. He commanded that they should take Daniel out of the den of lions right away and that no matter of hurt was found upon him because he believed in his God. The king wanted everyone to know that no matter of hurt was found upon Daniel because he believed in his God. Then the king commanded that the men which accused Daniel be cast into the den of lions. See, because the king realized they deceived him. He was not king material. He was a medium. He put himself into position. He was a young man. He didn't have the wisdom. He didn't think like a king. So he was easily persuaded by these people who had already been in leadership. He was persuaded. He was not too familiar with the law. Because when they got him to give the decree, they knew that that decree couldn't be broken if it was signed. So they made sure he signed it, meaning it can't be broken. If he would have gave a decree and not signed, then he could have changed it. But he signed it. And these men, when they saw, these leaders, when they saw that the king was trying to figure out a law that would save Daniel, they came back to remind him, you signed it. There's nothing to break this. You cannot break this because you signed it. So this king knew he was deceived. So when Daniel was saved by his God, the king got revenge for what those men did, not only to Daniel, but to him by deceiving him. He commanded that those men be cast into the den of lions, as well as their children and their wives. Sometimes we don't understand the decisions we make, the deceitful things that we do can affect more than just us. We have to be mindful of that. These leaders who plotted against Daniel, they reaped what they sowed. Just as it is stated in Galatians chapter 6 verse 7 of the Bible, it says, be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, so shall he reap. And that's what they did. They sowed that and they reaped it. They reaped what they sowed. King Darius wrote unto all people, nations, and language that dwelled in all the earth. He said, peace be multiplied unto you. I have made a decree that in every dominant of my kingdom men tremble in fear before the God of Daniel. In other words, respect the God of Daniel. For he is the living God and steadfast forever. And his kingdom, which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even until the end. He delivers and rescues, and he works signs and wonders in heaven and in earth, whom have delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Now, King Darius, who used to be a medium, who used to believe in the gods that was made by hand, who worshiped the gods that was made by hand, now has become a believer in the living God. In the living God, because of what he witnessed this living God can do that his gods could not do. When you are faithful continually faithful to the living God. That's what he witnessed. Him delivering Daniel out of the lion's den unharmed. The leaders who plotted against Daniel was jealous because he was a man of faith who was faithful, because of his light, because he had a good spirit, and because God gave him favor in knowledge, wisdom, visions, and interpreting dreams. Obviously, these leaders did not have a relationship with the living God in heaven. They believed and praised gods made of materials by their own hands. Their heart was hardened because they did not know love. They did not know love. How could these statues and these gods teach them love or show them love? So their heart was hardened. They did not know love. The kind of love that God gives. They didn't know that kind of love. The reason Daniel was a man of faith, who was faithful with a light that surrounded his aura and had a beautiful spirit, is because he knows love, the kind of love that God in heaven gives. God's love is available and freely given to all who receives it through their belief in him. God's love is comforting. It's peace. It draws you closer to him because of the joy you feel in your heart and in your spirit when you are in the presence of his love. It's a good addition. People be addicted to all kind of stuff, but his love is something you want to be addicted to. And it causes you to crave more of it. It's a healthy, safe place. It's a giving place. It's a protecting place. It's a sufficient place. There's no other love like the love of God. It's a love that's very hard to articulate because no words can describe it. It's a love that you can count on, you could depend on. It's a love that guarantees it will never hurt you. It's a love that don't know how to do nothing but give love. It's not a flip-flopping love. Love you one minute when you're doing good. God loves us even when we're not doing good. He made provision to draw us back to him. He still loves us. We're still his. Now, he may not like what we're doing when we're doing things that is not of him. He may punish us or allow things to come to us because we are being disobedient. But he still loves us. And the minute we change our heart and turn away from our evil ways, he's right there with his open arms to receive us back into his love, to be able to just feel the goodness and the presence of his love. His love, that it is hard to put it into words. However, it's a love that shows in one's countenance. It shows in a person. You can tell when a person is walking in God's love, when they have a relationship with him, when they are experiencing his love. It shows in a person's countenance. King Darius describes it best when he said Daniel has an excellent spirit in him. An excellent spirit in him. And that was the thing that many of the kings, not only King Darius, King Belshazzar, and King Nebuchadnezzar, they all noticed the beautiful spirit that Daniel had in him. And they all noticed how faithful he was to his God. He was without fault and error. He would do whatever his job title was to do, as long as it did not go against his God. And they noticed that about him. And because of that, he was promoted. Love is a beautiful thing. And God's love is available and is here for everyone who wants to receive it. Embrace it. Try it. Trust and believe. Once you do, you wouldn't want anything other than his love. There's no comparison. Click the thumbs up and the subscribe button. Be blessed. Be safe. Peace, people. Remember to click that thumbs up button.